Signs of the apocalypse. Daniel already predicted everything. The world is collapsing before our very eyes. Endless wars, increasingly frequent natural disasters, and a persistent sense of uncertainty that seems unshakable. But what if I told you that all of this was foretold? Thousands of years ago, Daniel, an ordinary man chosen by God, received visions that not only explained the past but also mapped out the future, our future. He saw clear signs pointing to an inevitable conclusion. Are you noticing what's happening? These signs are not just ancient stories. They are being fulfilled right now. Political instability, divisions among nations, systems that promise security but deliver chaos, everything was described. Daniel wasn't only talking about his time, he was talking about what we're experiencing today. Do you sense that something big is coming but don't know what it is? These events are no coincidence. They are a warning. That's why you should subscribe to the channel now to avoid missing any of the revealing details we will explore here. And while you watch, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments and spread the word to friends and family. They need to know what's coming, too. The most remarkable thing is that you don't have to live in darkness. Daniel's visions were given to prepare us, to show that there is a safe path through the chaos. But to see it, you need to open your eyes, recognize the signs, and make a decision. Will you truly understand what's happening and transform your life before it's too late? Time is running out. The choice is ours. The mysterious vision of the end times. Picture standing before a scene that unveils not only humanity's future but also the hidden reasons behind the greatest changes in history. This was Daniel's experience. An ordinary man who, because of his faith and obedience, received an extraordinary vision directly from God. What he saw was so grand and impactful that it completely changed his perception of the world. If you allow it, it could change yours too. Think about it. What if the key to understanding what's happening around you lay in something revealed thousands of years ago? Daniel wasn't unlike you. He had questions, doubts, and insecurities. But there was something unique about him. He was willing to listen and seek understanding. God chose him to be a messenger, someone who could shed light on hidden secrets of both the present and the future. His vision depicted kingdoms rising with strength and then vanishing like dust in the wind. Doesn't that sound familiar? We live in a world of systems that promise stability but crumble without warning. Now think, what in your life have you considered unshakable? Are you building your foundation on solid ground or shifting sands? Daniel's words resonate today because they speak not only of great kingdoms or empires but also of human frailty. He saw what many prefer to ignore, the fleeting nature of power, wealth, and even security. We often build our lives on empty promises or assume that tomorrow is guaranteed. But what if it's not? What if today is the only day you have to make a decision that changes everything? What would you do differently? Daniel reminds us that time is precious, and there's no room to procrastinate when it comes to eternal matters. As Daniel watched kingdoms rise and fall, he understood something that many still struggle to grasp. Nothing in this world is permanent. Everything we see, no matter how impressive, is temporary. His vision teaches us that there is a kingdom that cannot be shaken, a purpose that cannot be interrupted. But to be part of it, we must look beyond the immediate, beyond the superficial. How can you apply this to your life? Perhaps it's time to rethink your priorities, to invest more time in what truly matters. Your faith, your relationships, and the legacy you want to leave behind. Now, imagine living in a world where everything you once believed secure is put to the test. That's what Daniel saw. Yet, even in the face of such uncertainty, he found hope. This hope wasn't in kings, armies, or wealth, but in the promise of an eternal kingdom governed by a just and faithful God. He saw that despite the chaos, there is a greater purpose, one that gives meaning even to life's hardships. Pause for a moment and reflect. What has sustained you in difficult times? Are you leaning on something that can truly carry you, or on something that will fade with time? Daniel did not merely receive a vision. He received a mission. Daniel didn't just receive a vision. He was also given the responsibility to share it. This teaches us a powerful lesson. What God reveals to us is never meant solely for ourselves. There's always a greater purpose, a message capable of transforming lives. Think about your own journey. What experiences have you gone through that could help others? Often, what feels like an isolated challenge is actually an opportunity to touch someone's heart. Daniel's vision serves as a reminder that we all have something valuable to share. Speaking of sharing, have you ever thought about the impact of your choices today? Daniel saw that the actions of every person would be revealed in the end, as if everything were recorded in a great book. It's not a frightening idea, but a liberating one. It means that every choice matters, that nothing is insignificant. Now, ask yourself, if everything you've done were written down, what would that book say about you? What would you like to change before the final chapter is written? There's still time, but the clock is ticking. Daniel's vision also speaks of signs. Signs that often go unnoticed because we're too busy or distracted by trivial matters. Yet, these signs don't disappear. They remain, waiting to be acknowledged. Daniel challenges us to look beyond the obvious, to pay attention to what's happening around us. Have you noticed the signs in your own life? Perhaps that obstacle that seemed insurmountable is actually an invitation to trust God more. Perhaps that door that closed is redirecting you toward something greater. What seemed like a distant, irrelevant vision suddenly becomes deeply personal. Daniel saw not only the destiny of kingdoms, but also the destiny of every person who chooses to either ignore or embrace God's call. That includes you. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue living as if everything is guaranteed, or will you begin to see life as a unique opportunity to make a difference? The choice is yours, but remember, choices have consequences, and those consequences echo into eternity. Daniel's vision doesn't end here. It's just the beginning of something greater, a reminder that the future has already been written, but that you still have a crucial role to play. What will your next decision be? Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the prophetic clock. A powerful king, surrounded by wealth and influence, tormented by a dream he simply couldn't understand. Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler of Babylon, woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, with the image of a gigantic statue burned into his mind. It wasn't just an ordinary representation. Its different metals gleamed supernaturally, as though they carried hidden secrets. Yet, what disturbed him most were the statue's feet, a fragile mix of iron and clay. What could this mean? Why was the most powerful man on earth having such an enigmatic vision? This dream wasn't just about him. It was a prophetic clock, marking the ages of humanity. When Daniel was summoned to the king's presence to interpret the dream, he didn't hesitate. With the confidence of someone who knew that God reveals mysteries, Daniel explained that the statue was a map of the future. Each part of its body, made of a different metal, represented kingdoms that would rise and fall. The gold symbolized Babylon itself, radiant and powerful but destined to be replaced. Silver, bronze, iron, each represented an era of glory followed by decline. And then there were the feet. Mixed with clay, they pointed to a final period of fragility, a time of unstable alliances and divided kingdoms. Isn't it remarkable how something so distant still reflects our reality today? Daniel didn't just interpret the dream, he unveiled a powerful principle. Human power, no matter how dazzling, always has an expiration date. The civilizations the world has witnessed have followed this same pattern. Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, all had their peaks and falls. And today, it's not hard to see how contemporary political and social structures often resemble the feet of iron and clay, strong in appearance but vulnerable at their core. Think about your own life. How many times has something that seemed solid turned out to be fragile? Relationships, jobs, plans, everything can change in an instant. Daniel's interpretation reminds us of a truth that transcends time. The only foundation that lasts is the one built on God's eternal kingdom. The message within the dream, a call to build on eternal foundations. The message contained in Nebuchadnezzar's dream also serves as a warning. No matter how great earthly kingdoms may rise, none can replace the eternal kingdom of God. The vision describes a moment when a stone, not cut by human hands, descends from the heavens and destroys the statue entirely, becoming a mountain that fills the entire earth. This stone represents God's unshakable, eternal kingdom that will never be destroyed. Here lies the critical question: where are you building your life? On iron and clay, or on the rock that will never be moved? Nebuchadnezzar's dream is more than a historical curiosity. It is an invitation to spiritual preparation. Daniel shows us that understanding the signs is not enough. We must act. You might ask, what does this mean for me today? It means that every decision, every choice, must be made with the awareness that this world is temporary. Perhaps it's time to reevaluate your priorities, dedicating more to what is eternal and less to what is fleeting. And what about the feet of iron and clay? They symbolize not only an unstable political system but also our human nature. We are both strong and fragile, capable of great achievements but also prone to failure. This mix is not something to fear but to acknowledge. When we accept our limitations and trust in God, we find true stability. How do you handle your own weaknesses? Do you try to hide them, or do you place them in the hands of the one who can make you strong? The vision of the statue is also an opportunity to see divine sovereignty at work. No matter how chaotic the world may appear, nothing happens outside of God's control. Daniel understood this, which is why he could stand before a powerful king and declare the truth without fear. There is immense power in recognizing who is truly in charge. Are you living with this confidence, or are fear and insecurity dictating your actions? Interestingly, Nebuchadnezzar himself was transformed by this experience. He recognized, albeit temporarily, the greatness of God. But here's an important detail: recognition is not the same as surrender. How many times have you acknowledged the truth without acting on it? The king's dream challenges us to go beyond recognition. It calls us to action, to change, and to complete submission to God's plan. And so, the prophetic clock continues to tick. Every passing second brings us closer to the moment when the stone will descend to establish the eternal kingdom. But before that, the signs continue to unfold, calling for our attention, challenging our indifference. Are you ready for the next chapter in this story? What Daniel revealed to Nebuchadnezzar still resonates, pointing to a future that draws nearer with each passing moment. The terrifying beast and the 10 horns. Daniel stood before a vision that resembled a nightmare. He saw a terrifying creature with 10 horns, symbolizing future kingdoms. This beast was unlike any other, fierce in appearance, full of power and destruction. But what struck Daniel most was the emergence of a small horn among the others. Small, yes, but laden with a sinister force that would bring deception and chaos to the world. This symbol, often associated with the Antichrist, is one of the most intriguing mysteries in biblical history. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, could this small horn already be among us? Daniel noticed that this small horn had human eyes and a mouth that spoke arrogant words. It represented more than just political or military power. It was the embodiment of something much greater, a system designed to challenge God's authority. This leads us to reflect on the world we live in. How often have you seen leaders, ideologies, or systems that seem intent on taking God's place, offering easy answers to life's greatest questions? It can be tempting to trust in these modern horns, but do they really provide the answers we seek? The small horn reminds us that even the most subtle forces of deception can have profound effects. It challenges us to remain vigilant, to discern truth from falsehood, and to place our trust only in God. Are you watching for the signs, or are you allowing the distractions of the world to cloud your vision? Now is the time to stand firm, to build your foundation on the unshakable rock of faith, and to resist the forces that seek to pull you away. The vision of the beast and the 10 horns serves as both a warning and a call to action. Are you prepared to face what's coming? What strikes most about Daniel's vision? The subtle rise of evil. What's most striking about Daniel's vision is how the little horn gains power. It appears subtly, almost unnoticed, but quickly becomes a dominant force. This teaches us something crucial. Evil often begins small, in the details we overlook. It could be an apparently harmless choice, a habit that seems insignificant, or an idea we accept without question. Over time, these small concessions can grow and take over. Think about this. What in your life might be starting small but has the potential to become something destructive? This vision is also a warning about the nature of deception. The little horn not only brought destruction but also relied on deception. It used words to manipulate, distort the truth, and lead people to believe lies. In a world saturated with information, how can we ensure we're not being deceived? Perhaps it's time to return to the foundation, to reconnect with the unchanging truth of God's Word. Daniel shows us that discerning truth from falsehood is essential to avoid falling into the traps of deception. However, Daniel's vision does not end with the triumph of the little horn. On the contrary, it points to a conclusion that changes everything. Daniel saw the Ancient of Days, a figure representing God, seated on his throne. Books were opened, and judgment began. This reminds us that, no matter how powerful evil may appear, it will never have the final word. What do you think would be written in heaven's books about your life today? This is a question that cannot be ignored. The judgment depicted in Daniel's vision is not just a future event but a reminder that our actions have consequences. Every choice, every decision, is being recorded. This might seem intimidating, but it is also an opportunity. There is still time to change, to rewrite what is being recorded. What can you do today to ensure your story ends in a way that brings joy to God's heart? Beyond judgment, Daniel saw something extraordinary: the final victory. The little horn was destroyed, and God's eternal kingdom was established. This gives us hope, even amidst chaos. No matter how out of control the world may seem, God is working to fulfill His plan. Where are you placing your trust? In the horns that promise immediate security, or in the unshakable rock that is God? Daniel also teaches us that in times of uncertainty, we need to be vigilant. The little horn arose because no one was paying attention. How are we guarding our own lives? Are we attentive to the signs, to the influences we allow into our hearts and minds? Perhaps it's time to reevaluate our priorities and dedicate more time to what truly matters. Finally, Daniel's vision challenges us to act. It's not enough to know about the little horn or recognize the evil in the world. We must take concrete steps to align our lives with God's purposes. This might involve difficult changes, such as abandoning harmful habits or confronting truths we've avoided. But the reward is worth it, a place in God's eternal kingdom. The vision of the terrifying beast and the little horn is more than a frightening story. It's an invitation to a more conscious life, one aligned with God's will. What Daniel saw continues to resonate, pointing to a rapidly approaching future. The final judgment at the great white throne. Imagine a scene of awe and reverence. Daniel stands before a majestic vision, something that transcends all human understanding. He sees thrones being set in place, and the Ancient of Days, a figure representing God in His supreme glory, takes the seat of honor. His clothing is white as snow, and fire flows like a river from the throne. Surrounding him is an uncountable multitude of angels and celestial beings. Then, books are opened. These books contain every choice, every act, and every thought of all humanity. This is the final judgment. Now imagine, what would be written about your life in those books? This scene is not merely about fear but about the holiness and justice of God. It's a reminder that every action matters, and yet, it's also a call to grace. The books are open, but so is the opportunity to change the narrative. How will you respond? Will you continue living as if there's no accountability, or will you seize the chance to align your life with eternal truths? The decision is yours, but the time to act is now. Daniel's vision of the white throne, a reminder that everything matters. Daniel's vision of the white throne is a powerful representation that everything we do carries eternal significance. Every small decision, every word spoken, holds weight. This might seem daunting. After all, who can stand before such detailed judgment? But it's also incredibly freeing. Knowing that God is just and that nothing escapes His notice gives meaning to everything we experience. It challenges us to reevaluate how we spend our time and where we focus our energy. Reflect for a moment. If you had to give an account today, would you be satisfied with what you've done? One of the most profound aspects of this vision is the contrast between God's holiness and human frailty. Daniel saw a God who is pure, just, and eternal, juxtaposed against a humanity filled with flaws. This contrast is not a reason for despair but for reflection. It's precisely through our weakness that we can draw closer to God. When we acknowledge our limitations, we make room for Him to work within us. Are you seeking that closeness, or are you relying solely on your own strength? The fire flowing from the throne holds deep significance. It represents God's purifying and transformative power. Just as fire refines gold, God uses judgment to purify our hearts and prepare us for something greater. This reminds us that judgment isn't solely about condemnation, it's also about redemption. Consider the challenges you've faced in life. Often, these trials are like that fire, painful but necessary to transform us into something better. Can you view your struggles from this perspective? The books opened in Daniel's vision serve as a reminder that God not only observes but records everything. This may sound intimidating, but it's also proof that every act of kindness, every encouraging word, matters. Nothing is insignificant. We often believe that our small gestures go unnoticed, but God sees it all. What kind of story are you writing with your life? One of generosity and faith, or one of indifference and complacency? The vision also reminds us of the eternal weight of our choices. The final judgment won't be based on appearances or material achievements, but on how we've lived our lives. This challenges the superficial values that often dominate the world. How do you measure success? By the wealth you've accumulated or by the positive impact you've had on others? This is a question we all must consider, especially when reflecting on what truly matters. Despite the solemnity of the judgment, Daniel saw a hopeful outcome. The righteous would be rewarded, and God's eternal kingdom would be established. This reminds us that judgment is not the end but a new beginning, a transition into something infinitely better. However, to be part of that kingdom, we must be prepared. How are you preparing for what comes next? Is this something you've considered in your daily decisions? Another crucial lesson from Daniel's vision is that judgment is individual. Each person will be evaluated justly, based on their own choices. This challenges us to stop comparing our lives to others and focus on our personal spiritual journey. How are you handling this reality? Are you more focused on pleasing others or on living according to God's principles? Aligning with eternal principles. Daniel's vision invites us to step back and assess where we stand. It reminds us that we have the opportunity, even now, to make choices that align with God's eternal kingdom. Each decision, no matter how small, is a step toward a story we'll one day present before the throne. Are you writing a story worth sharing? Or are you letting the distractions of this world dictate your path? The vision of the white throne is not merely a picture of judgment. It's an invitation to live with purpose, with eyes fixed on what truly matters. Your story is still being written. What will the next chapter hold? The presence of the Ancient of Days, the center of all things. What makes Daniel's vision so impactful is the presence of the Ancient of Days. He is the centerpiece, the reference point that gives meaning to every detail of the vision. This reminds us that no matter what happens, God remains in control. He is just, faithful, and worthy of our trust. How are you placing God at the center of your life? This is a question that could transform the way you live. The final judgment is not just a future event. It's a reality that begins shaping our lives now. As Daniel continues to reveal humanity's destiny, one thing becomes clear. There is something even greater to come, the promise of an eternal kingdom where pain and suffering will exist no more. But how do we get there? The promise of final victory. Imagine for a moment if all pain, suffering, and injustice were to finally come to an end. That is what Daniel saw in his vision. The promise of an eternal kingdom where God reigns sovereign and humanity finds true peace. Despite the visions of destruction and chaos Daniel received, the conclusion was filled with hope. A kingdom was established where evil had no place. Now, pause for a moment. What would it be like to live in a place with no more tears, where love and justice prevail? This is the future God promises to those who trust in Him. Daniel witnessed something extraordinary. After kingdoms rose and fell, after the judgment that revealed every choice, God's glory was manifested definitively. A stone, not cut by human hands, became a mountain that filled the entire earth. This powerful symbol represents God's kingdom, one that cannot be shaken. It prompts us to reflect on what truly matters. Where are we investing our time, energy, and resources? Are we building on solid foundations or on things that will crumble with time? The promise of God's eternal kingdom is a message of hope, but it's also a call to action. It's not enough to wait passively. We are invited to live according to the values of that kingdom now. This means prioritizing compassion, justice, and humility in our daily interactions. Think about your recent decisions. Do they reflect these values? Perhaps it's time to reassess your priorities and align your actions with what holds eternal value. What makes this promise even more special is its inclusivity. It doesn't matter your background, failures, or past. The invitation to be part of God's kingdom is open to all. Daniel saw that nations would gather under God's rule in a place where unity would prevail. In a world so divided, This is a powerful reminder that something greater connects us. How can you cultivate unity in your own life? Perhaps it starts with forgiving someone, extending a hand to someone in need, or simply being a voice of peace in the chaos. The promise of final victory also teaches us about resilience. Daniel lived through difficult times under the oppression of seemingly invincible kingdoms, yet he never lost faith in God's sovereignty. This faith sustained him even when everything around him seemed to crumble. And you? What has sustained you in your most difficult moments? Maybe it's time to strengthen your faith, to lean on the unshakable rock that is God. Another important aspect of this promise is the end of suffering. Daniel saw a future where there would be no more pain, no more tears. For many of us, this idea feels distant, especially when we're facing personal challenges. But this vision reminds us that suffering does not have the final word. Every tear, every loss, will be redeemed. Think about the areas of your life where you feel the most pain. What would it look like to surrender those areas to God, trusting that He has a greater plan? God's final victory also challenges us to live with purpose. Knowing that an eternal kingdom awaits should motivate us to make choices that reflect this destiny. Every act of kindness, every moment of gratitude, is a way to bring a piece of that kingdom into the present. How can you do this today? Perhaps by showing love to someone who feels forgotten, or by being grateful for the blessings you often overlook. Daniel's vision reminds us that evil has an expiration date. No matter how powerful it seems now, it will be defeated. This gives us the courage to face challenges with hope and determination. We are not fighting alone. God is by our side, guiding every step. How does this perspective change the way you approach your problems? Perhaps it's an invitation to trust more and fear less. Finally, the promise of final victory reminds us that the best is yet to come. As beautiful and joyful as moments in this world can be, they don't compare to what God has prepared for us. This truth should fill us with anticipation and inspire us to live in a way that reflects the hope we carry. Imagine, how would your life change if you lived with this certainty every day? What changes would you make in your priorities, relationships, and faith? A call to action. While Daniel's vision ends with the promise of an eternal kingdom, the journey toward that kingdom continues. Each day is an opportunity to prepare, to align your life with the values of that glorious future. And so, the story doesn't end here. It invites us to look forward to the next chapter, where we'll see how this promise connects with what God still has to reveal. Daniel's message is clear. The future is shaped by the choices we make today. Every step you take, every decision you make, is not only molding your destiny but also impacting the world around you. Have you considered how you can make a difference? It might begin with small changes, like choosing what truly holds eternal value, putting God at the center of your life, and reflecting that choice in your daily actions. If this message has touched your heart, I invite you to take the next step. Subscribe to this channel to keep learning about the signs of the times, how to live with hope, and how to transform your life through biblical truths. Turn on notifications and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. You could be the instrument that changes a life today. So, what are you waiting for? The time is now, and your decision makes all the difference.